Now, there's a lot of stories out there, and you know and I know that there's true stories and there's lies. And one of the things that addicts and alcoholics are good at is we're good at lying. You know, we're very creative when it comes to lying. We can lie and we can be so convincing about it that we can get over on people. Now, you know, there's also true stories. And some of you are very familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous and 12-step programs. And in these programs, we tell our story, which is the story of our drinking and our drugging and our recovery and our hopes for the future. Now, the story I'm talking about today sort of complements the AA story, if you will, or the NA story. And this is the autobiographical story of your life. Your story. You're the only one that has it. Everybody's different. And what I want to talk to you about is about this autobiographical story. And I want to talk about what happens in the brain, you know, and how we put together defenses that keep us from kind of understanding what one part of the brain is doing versus another part of the brain. And have you ever noticed that sometimes you have trouble putting words to your feelings? That's a very difficult thing for alcoholics and addicts to do. One of the things we've been able to do as addicts is to separate those things out, you know, and so what we want to do is we want to try to start to put them back together again. And so that's the theme of what we'll talk about, putting these things back together again, sort of taking pieces that are here, here, and here, and merging them all into one whole where we can understand all of them within the context of our life. Now, an autobiographical story, if you will, just is going to help you understand where you come from. And that's the basis of it. And why you're here and where you are now. You know, what's going on. The whole story from kind of soup to nuts, if you will, how it got started, what happened in your family, how things developed, how you ended up here. And so this story is just a way of allowing you to understand. And you know, one question that we ask ourselves is, you know, where do we come from? And I don't know about your family. I mean, I can only tell you about mine. The question that I'd ask is, did you come from a home where your mother and father were always there for you? I didn't. You know, my dad was never there. I think he was a good man. And I think he cared for him in his own way, but he was never there. I never really knew him. My mother was around, but she was very distant. I really can tell you that it took a lot of years just to know her. She's still living today. My father died when I was very young. And so when I look at these things, coming from that type of environment has affected me, you know, and some of the decisions I make. Do you know in your brain, you have, based on your primary caregivers, whether it's your mother, father, grandparents, or whatever, your brain has like a picture inside of it. And we tend to be attracted to people who are very much like our caregivers. And it's an interesting thing. We tend to be attracted like people who are like our moms, for example. And this is very, very natural. And if you're attracted to people who are like your father, who maybe was abusive or was not there. Now, when someone says to you, go out and pick a sponsor, or go out and stick with the winners, or go find some healthy people to deal with, what kind of person are you going to be attracted to? We don't know about those healthy people. They're not a part of our history most of the time. We've been around addicts and we've been about people who drink, and we have pictures in our brain often of parents or caregivers who weren't always there for us. Maybe because they were addicted. Maybe because they were alcoholic. And so when we go out to pick out a sponsor or pick out a healthy person, we'll generally pick out a person who reminds us of one of our caregivers who may have been abusive or absent, and that's not the person that you need. You need somebody different than that. But our natural choice, and some of you may have found that you're attracted to the same women over and over again, and it never works out very well. You have this like fiery relationship, and all of a sudden, other than being in bed, you don't have much in common with them, and after that kind of is over with, there's nothing left in the relationship. And so these sort of attractions are important to understand. And so this is one of the questions, you know, where do we come from? You know, did you have parents that gave you everything you needed when you were a kid? And I'm not talking about material things. I'm talking about love. You know, we're there for you, told you stories, played ball with you, helped you pursue your interests, you know, provided you with what you need to grow up and be a good father yourself. So I got a 14-year-old son, be 15 this month, and I didn't know what a father was. I mean, I never really had one. I mean, I love my father. What I know of him, I know more about him, you know, since he's passed away than I did when he was living. But, you know, it's not genetic that you know how to be a parent. You learn these things from people. People teach you this. You get it by watching other people. And so when we grow up in situations where we didn't get that, or we were hurt, or we were neglected, or physically abused, or something like this, then this can create a whole lot of problems, because we don't just naturally, genetically walk out and say, hey, it looks like a pretty healthy person. This is somebody I need to, you know, to be a part of my program, or I need to stick with this individual. We're just naturally will gravitate towards people who are often the worst people in the world that we could be with. And, you know, it's just part of our history. But these are things that you can change.